On the bottom shelf of the basement utility room of the 1971 split level on Brittany Avenue in Schaumburg, Illinois, behind a stack of 4 winter tires that have not been moved in 3 seasons, there is a Sentry HD 4100 Fireproof file box. Inside the box, on the morning of the 4th of December, 2025, there were 14 manila folders, 1,847 printed entry summaries from United States Customs and Border Protection, 1,624 Taiwan country of origin certificates from a company called CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu, 412 supplier purchase orders out of Xiamen Tungsten Industry Company Limited in the Fujian Province of China, 1 labeled CDR in a clear plastic sleeve containing a single PDF document, and 1 38-page hand-drafted analytical memorandum titled Substantial Transformation Failure Analysis, CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu, October 2018 to August 2024. On top of the closed lid of the box, set there as a paperweight, was a black anodized aluminum challenge coin engraved on one face with the words, Caterpillar Aurora, 31 years, 1981-2015. The coin had been given to me by my father, Quan Tran, on the night of his retirement dinner in October of 2015, with the words, in his own English, "This is for keeping me honest." On the morning of the 4th of December, 2025, the United States Department of Justice Office of Public Affairs published a press release. The press release was 3 paragraphs long. The first paragraph said, $54.4 million. The second paragraph said, largest customs fraud, False Claims Act settlement in the history of the United States. The third paragraph credited the Civil Division Commercial Litigation Branch, the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Michigan, the Customs and Border Protection Office of Trade, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General. The third paragraph did not contain my name. It referred to me, once, as a current employee of the defendant who came forward as a relator under Title 31, United States Code Section 3730, subsection B. I read the press release on my phone in the cafeteria of the Ceratizit USA facility on Higgins Road in Schaumburg on my lunch break, sitting at the same round table where I had eaten lunch alone 4 days a week for 19 years. I finished my tuna sandwich. I rinsed the plastic container at the cafeteria sink. I returned to the basement administrative wing on the lower ground floor. I filed the day's slide deck draft in the shared drive at 4:58 in the afternoon. I drove home. I made dinner. We watched the local Channel 5 news. We went to bed. My name is Valerie Tran-Osterlund. I am 53 years old. I work for the United States subsidiary of an Austrian metals conglomerate whose name appeared in print on the 4th of December, 2025, alongside a number it had never wanted to see published. I am the Senior Import Compliance Specialist who, between the 2nd of November 2018 and the 23rd of January 2026, indexed every entry summary, every origin certificate, every supplier purchase order, and every internal directive that turned a company directive from Reutte, Tyrol, Austria, into $54.4 million in evaded customs duties on tungsten carbide cutting tool blanks routed from Xiamen, China, through the Hsinchu Science Park in Taiwan, and declared to the United States government as a Taiwanese product. I did the indexing on personal time. I did it on a personal printer in the basement of the Brittany Avenue split level. I did it with my own ink. I did not run a single page through the corporate network. I did this for 4 years. The system works if you follow the rules. That is the sentence my father said to me in Vietnamese when I was a child, and again in English when I was older, and a third time on the night he gave me the challenge coin in October of 2015. The system can also be made to lie if the people inside it agree to lie together. I did not agree. This is the story of what I did instead. I am going to start in 1979 because that is the year my father crossed the Pacific Ocean. He was 31 years old. He had been born in Saigon in 1948. He left on the 7th of April, 1979, on a wooden fishing vessel out of Vung Tau with 8 other men. The vessel was at sea for 11 days. They were picked up by a Norwegian cargo ship called the Hogue Trotter. The Norwegian captain made a detour to Pulau Bedong, a small island off the eastern coast of peninsular Malaysia, where the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees had established a processing camp the year before. My father lived on Pulau Bedong for 14 months. In June of 1980, he was sponsored to Aurora, Illinois, by Lutheran Refugee Services, working through a partner congregation called Aurora Lutheran Church on Galena Boulevard. He had one canvas duffel bag, 2 changes of clothes, a pair of cheap eyeglasses, and 43 American dollars in his pocket. In January of 1981, after 6 months of English language tutoring at the church, he was hired as a machinist apprentice at the Caterpillar plant on Liberty Street in Aurora. He clocked in for the first time on the morning of the 7th of January at 6 in the morning. He clocked out for the last time on the 2nd of October, 2015, at 4:30 in the afternoon, after 31 continuous years on the floor. My mother is named Inga Marie Osterlund Tran. She was born in Rockford, Illinois, in 1951, the third generation in a Swedish-American family that had come to northern Illinois from Smallland in the 1870s. She graduated from the University of Illinois with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing in 1973. She took a position in the pediatric ward of Pravina Mercy Medical Center in Aurora in 1974, and she worked at that hospital for 44 years. She met my father in the autumn of 1981 at the same English as a Second Language program where he was a student and she had volunteered for the Wednesday evening conversation hour. They were married in the sanctuary of the Aurora Lutheran Church on a Saturday morning in May of 1983. I was born on the 3rd of August, 1973. That makes me, by the calendar of these two people, an impossibility. I came into the world 10 years before they met. My biological mother, a Vietnamese woman named Hoa, had died in childbirth at a refugee field hospital in Pulau Bedong in August of 1973, 3 months after my father reached the camp. The Norwegian captain who picked up my father's boat at sea had also picked up Hoa. On a morning in November of 1983, my mother Inga adopted me through the Kane County Circuit Court and assumed the responsibility of raising the child of the man she had married in May. The sentence that ran through my childhood, in 3 languages, and from 2 parents who had no obvious reason to share a sentence, was the same sentence. The system works if you follow the rules. He thong se huat dong nu ban tuan theo kakwi tak. My mother repeated it in English at the kitchen table when she was helping me fill out a financial aid form in 1991. My father repeated it in Vietnamese in the front seat of the same brown 1984 Buick station wagon for 16 years of school drop-offs. I never thought about it as an axiom. I thought about it as the floor. I went to East Aurora High School. I graduated in 1991. I attended Northern Illinois University in DeKalb on a partial scholarship, working 20 hours a week at a Walgreen photo counter to cover the rest. I graduated in 1995 with a Bachelor of Science in Operations Management. I took a job that summer as a junior import clerk at a customs brokerage firm called Trans-Pacific Customs Brokers in Itasca, Illinois, 4 blocks from the O'Hare Cargo Terminal. The position paid $27,500 a year. I spent 10 years at Trans-Pacific. I learned to read a Customs and Border Protection Form, 7501 entry summary, the way my father had learned to read an engine torque specification. The form is a map. The map is not the territory. The job of an import compliance specialist, properly understood, is to read the map and to ask, with regularity, whether the map matches the territory. In 2003, I enrolled in evening classes at Roosevelt University on State Street in Chicago in a Master of Arts program in International Trade Compliance. I drove the 40 miles each way on Monday and Wednesday evenings for 36 months. I completed the degree in 2006. In May of 2006, I accepted a position at Ceratizit USA on Higgins Road in Schaumburg as a senior import compliance specialist. The position paid $61,000 a year. My first day of work was the 8th of May. I placed on my desk a framed photograph of my father in his Caterpillar coveralls at his lathe, taken by my mother in November of 2014. I have worked at Ceratizit USA for 19 years. The Ceratizit USA facility on Higgins Road occupies a 5-story mid-rise of glass and tan-colored sandstone built in 1993. The parent corporation is Ceratizit Aktiengesellschaft, headquartered in Reute, Tyrol, Austria, which is itself a subsidiary of Plancy Group, a privately held Austrian metals conglomerate with continuous ownership of the Reute tungsten carbide manufacturing site since 1921. The Schaumburg subsidiary employs approximately 300 people. About 40 of them work in the Import Compliance and Trade Administration departments. We make and import indexable cutting tool inserts, milling cutters, drills, reamers, and tungsten carbide blanks for the North American manufacturing market. One of our customers, in the years between 2005 and 2014, was a Caterpillar Regional Distribution Center in Joliet, Illinois, which supplied tungsten carbide cutting tool blanks to the Caterpillar Aurora plant, where my father stood at his lathe for 31 years. I have looked twice in the corporate sales records, and I have not been able to confirm a specific shipment from Schaumburg to Aurora that ended at his particular machine. I have come to accept that the metallurgical record of Midwestern heavy equipment manufacturing in the late 1990s and early 2000s makes such a shipment plausible without making it traceable. I have stopped trying to prove it. The point is not the proof. The point is the chain. I worked in the Import Compliance Department from May of 2006 until May of 2019. In April of 2014, the company hired a new director of import operations. His name is Roger Whitlock Halpern. He was 47 years old when he arrived. He had been born in Aurora, Illinois in 1968. He had attended Carthage College in Wisconsin, graduating in 1990 with a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration. He had spent the first 13 years of his career at Sandvik Coromant in regional procurement before joining Ceratizit USA in 2003 as a senior buyer. He was, on his face, a competent and reasonable middle manager of the kind that staffs the second tier of every American manufacturing subsidiary of a European parent. He wore a blue suit jacket on the back of his chair every day of the week. He kept a coffee cup on his desk that read, Carthage Furbirds 1990 in faded green print. He had been married 31 years to a woman named Connie, who dispatched school buses for Community Unit School District U46. They had 3 adult children. They had paid off the mortgage in 2022. He intended, in the fall of 2018, to retire from Ceratizit USA in 2028 at the age of 60. The work was the work. From 2006 until 2018, the Import Compliance Department processed approximately 900 entry summaries per month against the relevant harmonized tariff schedule classifications, primarily 8203.10.34 files, rasps, and similar tools, and 8209.00 for plates, sticks, tips, and the like for tools, unmounted, of Cermets. We worked with our brokers to file Form 7501s and origin certifications. My annual reviews were uniformly favorable. My salary, by January of 2018, was $118,000. The framed photograph of my father at his lathe stayed on my desk through every reorganization. When I look back at those 12 years now, I see a person who came into work at 7:30 in the morning, ate her lunch at the same round cafeteria table 4 days a week and at her desk on Fridays, completed her work, and went home at 5:15 on the dot. I was not unhappy. I was not bored. I was a member, in good standing, of an institutional system that I had been raised to believe was the load-bearing structure of American economic life. I read customs and border protection bulletins on weekends because I found them interesting. I carried a paperback copy of Title 19 of the Code of Federal Regulations in my work bag. The system was working. I was following the rules. In the second week of September 2018, the Office of the United States Trade Representative announced the third tranche of Section 301 tariffs on imports from the People's Republic of China. The announcement was published in the Federal Register on the 21st of September, with an effective date of the 24th. List 3 covered approximately $200 billion in annual import value at an initial duty rate of 10%, scheduled to escalate to 25% on the 1st of January 2019. The list included tungsten carbide products under several harmonized tariff schedule lines, including the 8209.00 classification, on which approximately 60% of our annual import volume into Schaumburg ran. I drafted a one-page internal memorandum to Roger Halpern outlining the projected duty exposure. The estimated additional duty cost, at the initial 10% rate, was approximately $1.4 million annually. At the 25% rate scheduled for January, the figure would rise to $3.5 million. I sent the memorandum. Roger acknowledged receipt within the hour. He wrote, "Thanks, Valerie, this is helpful. I am going to schedule a call with Ryudi for next week. I assumed, correctly, that the call would happen. I assumed, incorrectly, that the call would result in a normal compensating adjustment to either the supplier price, the product mix, or the customer pricing on the Schaumburg side. I assumed this for 6 weeks. On the afternoon of Wednesday, the 7th of November, 2018, an origin certificate arrived in my electronic in-basket from a company I had not previously seen on the Ceratizit supplier list. The company was named CB-Ceratizit Company Limited, with an address in Hsinchu Science Park, Taiwan. The certificate covered a shipment of approximately 4,000 kilograms of tungsten carbide cutting tool blanks, classified under Harmonized Tariff Schedule 8, 203.10.30, with a declared country of origin of Taiwan. I opened the certificate. I read it twice. I pulled, from the prior month archive, a similar origin certificate covering a similar shipment from May of 2018, 6 months earlier. The May certificate listed a country of origin of People's Republic of China, with a supplier of Xiamen Tungsten Industry Company Limited. The product description was substantially identical. The customer was the same. I opened the supplier purchase order linked to the November certificate. The upstream supplier on the purchase order behind the CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu shipment was Xiamen Tungsten Industry Company Limited, Fujian Province, China. The shipping manifest showed that the material had been received at the Hsinchu warehouse on Sunday, the 28th of October, had remained at the warehouse for 7 days, and had been re-exported to Detroit on Sunday, the 4th of November, under a CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu commercial invoice, naming Taiwan as the country of origin. I have, somewhere in the back of my hand, the 4 sub-criteria of substantial transformation under Title 19 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 102.20. There must be a change in tariff classification. There must be a value-added threshold met. There must be a substantive processing operation performed. There must be a satisfaction of the applicable rule of origin under Title 19. The Hsinchu certificate listed the processing performed on the material as inspection, relabeling, and repackaging. None of those activities, alone or in combination, satisfies any of the 4 sub-criteria. The product entered the Hsinchu warehouse as Chinese tungsten carbide cutting tool blanks. The product left the Hsinchu warehouse 7 days later as Chinese tungsten carbide cutting tool blanks. The only change was the address on the commercial invoice. I sat at my desk for approximately 20 minutes. I closed the certificate. I closed the supplier purchase order. I closed the manifest. I picked up the manila folder containing the printed copies of both certificates. I walked the 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor. I knocked on Roger Halpern's open office door at 4:09 in the afternoon. Roger looked up. He smiled. He said, "Valerie, what can I do for you?" I closed the door behind me. I sat down in the chair opposite his desk. I laid the 2 certificates side by side, facing him. I said, "Roger, this November shipment from CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu is declared as Taiwanese origin. The May shipment of substantially the same product from the same upstream Xiamen supplier is declared as Chinese origin. The Hsinchu warehouse held the material for 7 days. The processing performed was inspection, relabeling, and repackaging. Under Title 19, Part 102.20, that does not meet the substantial transformation requirement. The country of origin of this product is China. The certificate is incorrect. If we file Form 7501 with this certificate as the basis for our origin claim, we are declaring a false country of origin to Customs and Border Protection. The Section 301 tariff applies. We owe 25% on this entry, not 10% on a non-Chinese product. Roger looked at the certificates for about 30 seconds. He sat back in his chair. He set his hands flat on the desk between us. He smiled the smile of a man who has been told something he was hoping not to be told, but who has already been instructed in the appropriate response. He said, "Valerie, we have a Taiwan entity. The product moves through Hsinchu. The certificate reflects the entity of last shipment. That is how the system works." I said, "Roger, that is not how the system works. Substantial transformation requires more than repackaging. This is a country of origin claim that does not satisfy the regulation. Customs is going to read this as transshipment." He said, "Valerie, this is above my pay grade. I am sure Reuter has thought it through. Let us not get ahead of the people who actually make these decisions." He said, "Listen, you are the best compliance specialist in this building. I want you focused on what you are good at. The country of origin call is not yours to make on a corporate level. It is mine. It is based on guidance from Reuter. We are good." He said, "Anything else?" I said, "No, Roger." I picked up the certificates. I walked back down to the second floor. I opened the small spiral notebook I kept in my work bag. I wrote in my own handwriting the date, the time, the certificate number of the November Hsinchu shipment, the purchase order number of the upstream Xiamen shipment, the substance of the conversation in Roger's office, and the 7 words he had said about pay grade. I closed the notebook. I went home at 5:15. I worked through the rest of November and into December and through the spring of 2019 as if nothing had changed. The CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu certificates continued to arrive at a rate of approximately 20 per month. I read each one. I cross-referenced each one against the upstream Xiamen purchase order. I printed each one at home on my own printer. I filed the printed certificates in a manila folder labeled CB-Ceratizit November 2018 Plus. Once a week, in the corridor outside the break room or in the cafeteria during lunch, I asked Roger a casual version of the same question. I would say, "Roger, anything new on the Hsinchu routing?" He would say, "Valerie, we are aware." He would say, "Root has reviewed." He would say, "That is the protocol." He would say, "Let us stay in our lane." He never raised his voice. He never appeared, in the slightest, to be a man under stress. He was a man executing an instruction from a place he did not control, and he had already decided that his role was to execute, and his executions were uniformly polite. In the first week of April 2019, I went to the main branch of the Aurora Public Library on a Saturday afternoon, and I sat at one of the public computer terminals for 3 hours and read the False Claims Act. The False Claims Act is codified at Title 31, United States Code Sections 3729 through 3733. It contains, at Section 3730 subsection B, what is called the qui tam provision, which permits a private person, called a relator, to file a civil action in the name of the United States government against any person who has knowingly presented or caused to be presented a false or fraudulent claim for payment to the United States. The action is filed under seal. The government has 60 days to investigate. If the government intervenes, the relator receives between 15 and 25% of any recovery. The action covers, by long-standing administrative practice, the reverse situation in which a person has knowingly avoided or decreased an obligation to pay money to the government. Customs duties are an obligation to pay money to the government. Section 3729 applies. I made no copies. I left the library at 4:15 in the afternoon. I drove home down Galena Boulevard, past the corner where the Caterpillar plant gates had stood for 43 years. I sat in the silver Honda Accord in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside. I understood that the folder in the dresser was no longer just a record. It was the beginning of a case. On Monday, the 6th of May, 2019, at 4:41 in the afternoon, while I was in a routine harmonized tariff schedule classification working group meeting, 2 floors below my own desk, Roger Halpern left a voicemail message on my office phone. The message was 47 seconds long. I listened to it at 5:18, standing at my cubicle with my coat already over my arm. He said, "Valerie, hey Roger, listen, we would love your skill set on the trade education side. We are spinning up a strategic trade outreach specialist role, and you are the obvious person. Same compensation, expanded breadth, lots of latitude. Stop by my office tomorrow morning. We will talk through it. Thanks." I played the message a second time. I played it a third time. The phrase I focused on the third pass was expanded breadth. The previous time I had heard a senior manager use that phrase, in any setting, in 19 years of corporate work, had been at Trans-Pacific Customs Brokers in 2004, when a junior broker had been moved from accounts receivable into a newly created director of vendor engagement role 1 week before he was let go in a quarterly headcount adjustment. Expanded breadth, in American middle management, is the phrase you use when you are about to remove from a person something specific. I did not write anything down at the cubicle. I put on my coat. I drove home. I lay in bed at 11:30 staring at the ceiling. I understood what was about to happen. I understood that I had approximately 15 hours, which is to say from 8 in the morning the next day until access to the corporate import system was terminated as a function of my role transfer, to extract whatever I would not be able to access afterward. I arrived at the office on Tuesday the 7th at 6:45 in the morning, 2 hours before my normal start. I logged into the corporate trade compliance system. I exported to a personal USB flash drive that I had purchased at a Best Buy in Hoffman Estates the previous evening in cash, 3 internal supplier relations spreadsheets covering the period from October of 2018 through April of 2019. I copied them, ejected the drive, placed it in the inside pocket of my cardigan, and continued my normal Tuesday morning workflow. At 9:15, I went to Roger Halpern's office. I listened to his 15-minute description of the Strategic Trade Outreach Specialist position. I asked 3 questions about reporting structure and compensation timing. I said yes. I said thank you. I said I was looking forward to the new opportunity. Roger smiled. He shook my hand across the desk. At 12:42 in the afternoon, returning from lunch, I attempted to open the Automated Commercial Environment Cargo Release System. Error 403. I attempted the Customs and Border Protection Form 7501 Read Interface. Error 403. The Origin Certificate Repository. Error 403. I did not call the Information Technology Help Desk. I knew what had happened. The role transfer had been processed at noon. 3 system access lines had been revoked at the same minute. I closed the browser. I returned to my workflow. At 4:48 in the afternoon, I drove home with the USB flash drive in my cardigan pocket. I placed the drive in the bottom right-hand drawer of the desk in the basement utility room. I did not open it. I closed the drawer. I went upstairs and I made dinner. The Strategic Trade Outreach Specialist position came with an office, technically. The office was a 5-by-7-foot cubicle on the lower ground level of the Higgins Road facility, in what had been a record storage area until 2017. The walls of the cubicle were 1.4 meters high. The ceiling fluorescents had not been updated since the 90s. There were no windows. There was a single structural column rising through the center of the office, visible from my chair as a corner of textured gray paint. There was a facilities management coordinator in the cubicle diagonally across the aisle, a woman in her late 40s named Cheryl Wisniewski, who had a wall-mounted monitor she kept tuned to a weather radar feed for the greater Chicago metropolitan area. From my desk, when I lifted my eyes from my own monitor, I could see 2 things. The corner of the column, the back of Cheryl's monitor, on which a slow green sweep of weather radar moved counterclockwise across the suburbs of Cook and DuPage counties for 8 hours a day. The work, from May of 2019 until December of 2024, consisted of producing PowerPoint slide decks for an internal trade education program aimed at junior procurement interns who rotated through the Schaumburg facility twice a year. The presentations averaged 45 minutes. They covered topics like Understanding Free Trade Agreements, Introduction to Customs Brokerage, and A Brief Introduction to Section 301. Each presentation was delivered to between 4 and 7 interns who would take notes on their corporate-issue laptops, ask 1 or 2 questions out of politeness, and rotate out of the room at the end of the hour. Between May of 2019 and December of 2024, I produced 23 of these slide decks. The total internal corporate audience for all of them combined was approximately 98 people. In January of 2020, 8 months after the role transfer, Roger Halpern conducted my first annual review under the new title. He had the Workday Human Resources document open on his desktop screen, angled toward me so that we could read it together. He read aloud from the printed copy on his desk. He said, "Valerie, you have demonstrated remarkable adaptability in your expanded breadth of trade contribution and have become an indispensable thought leader in our intern development pipeline." He looked up. He said, "Exceeds expectations." He said, "The merit increase is 3.1%. He said, "Congratulations, Valerie. We are very pleased." I said, "Thank you, Roger." I scrolled, on the angled screen, to the second page of the Workday record, which contained the System Access Audit Log. 3 lines on that page were grayed out. A CS Cargo Release System, revoked 5/14 of 2019. Customs and Border Protection Form 7501, Read Access, revoked 5/14 of 2019. Origin Certificate Repository, Write Access, revoked 5/14 of 2019. The praise on the first page and the revocation on the second page were entries in the same Workday record from the same calendar week. The praise was the cover the revocation walked under. I thanked him a second time. I returned to the basement cubicle. I worked in that cubicle for 6 years. I did not request a relocation. I did not apply for any other internal position. I did not file a complaint with Human Resources. I came in at 7:30. I left at 5:15. I produced the slide decks. I returned to my cubicle. I went home. From the outside, in any Human Resources report from the Schaumburg facility between May of 2019 and January of 2026, I was a senior employee in good standing, exceeding expectations on every annual cycle, drawing a 3% merit increase every January, eating tuna sandwiches in the cafeteria 4 days a week, walking the same route from the parking garage to the elevator every morning. The cubicle did not know. The cubicle did not need to know. The cubicle was where I went between the things that mattered. The things that mattered happened at home, in the basement utility room of the Brittany Avenue split level, between the hours of 8:30 in the evening and 10:30 at night, 4 to 6 nights a week, for a continuous period of 50 months. I bought the Sentry H D4100 Fireproof File Box at a Home Depot on Roselle Road in May of 2019, the weekend after the role transfer. It cost $147, paid in cash. I placed it on the bottom shelf of the basement utility room, behind the stack of 4 winter tires. My husband Daniel knew the box existed. He did not know what was in it. I had told him, in May of 2019, that the role transfer had also involved a decision on my part to begin assembling, on personal time, a private archive of customs records relating to a long-term professional research interest in tariff compliance methodology. Daniel works as a software test engineer at Allstate in Northbrook. He knows the difference between research and confession. He did not ask further questions. He has not asked further questions in 7 years. He does not need to know. He does not want to know. Our daughter Lynn, who turned 18 in the summer of 2019 and left for Northwestern that September, did not know the box existed at all until the second week of December 2025. The work, in the basement, consisted of 3 main streams. The first was the systematic indexing of every Customs and Border Protection entry summary on which the Schaumburg facility had been the importer of record between October of 2018 and the most recent month publicly accessible. The source was the Port Import-Export Reporting Service, called PIERS, available by paid subscription. I subscribed to Peers at the basic professional tier in June of 2019 at a cost of $189 per month, billed to my personal credit card. I supplemented the Peers data with Freedom of Information Act requests filed through outside counsel. By the end of 2024, the number had grown to 1,847 entry summaries. The second stream was the systematic collection of every CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu, Taiwan, country of origin certificate that had passed through the Schaumburg facility. I collected 1,624 certificates over the period. The third stream was the upstream supplier purchase order chain, obtained through a separate commercial database called Panjiva. The pattern was consistent. Material left Xiamen, material arrived at the CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu warehouse approximately 5 to 12 days later. Material remained for between 3 and 9 days. Material then exited under a Taiwan country of origin certificate destined for Detroit. The median dwell time at Hsinchu over the 6-year period was 4.7 days. The Hsinchu site was a relabeling and repackaging stop. It was nothing else. In April of 2022, I received a telephone call at home on a Tuesday evening from a contact I knew slightly through the German-American Chamber of Commerce in Chicago. The contact, a customs attorney named Heinrich Brauer, said, "Valerie, I have a former Reuter logistics coordinator named Stefan Karl Lechner-Przynski who left Ceratizit Aktiengesellschaft in October of last year. He has something he believes you would want to see. He has asked whether you would be willing to meet for 30 minutes in a public place." I said yes. We met at 8:10 in the evening on Tuesday, the 19th of April, 2022, in a corner booth at the Joe's Crab Shack on Gulf Road. Stefan Lechner-Przynski was 43 years old, dressed in a plain navy windbreaker and gray slacks. He was a Polish-Austrian dual national. He had spent 11 years at Ceratizit Aktiengesellschaft in Reuter in a logistics coordinator role attached to the Global Procurement Office. He had left in October of 2021 over a contractual dispute. He had retained, through a clause in his exit agreement, a Reuter-issued laptop, the contents of which had not been remotely wiped because the wipe protocol had failed in human resources in the week of his departure. He slid across the Formica table, between a half-eaten basket of fried shrimp and a glass of water, a plain CDR disc in a clear plastic sleeve. He said, in lightly accented English, "This is a copy of an internal email of the 24th of September, 2018, from Dr. Reinhard Maria Eichinger-Stoss, Vice President Global Procurement, Ceratizit Aktiengesellschaft, to Roger Whitlock Halpern, Director of Import Operations, Ceratizit USA Schaumburg." The subject line is Tariff Hit Response. The attachment is a single PDF titled Schaumburg Hsinchu Routing Protocol version 1. It instructs the Schaumburg subsidiary to compensate the Section 301 tariff exposure through the CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu entity and to treat the Taiwan entry as the country of origin of record. He said, "I am giving you a copy because I believe what they are doing is illegal under American customs law. I am willing to testify if subpoenaed." He said, "Austria will not extradite me either." He said, "Do not contact me again unless you are filing." I said, "Thank you, Stefan." He paid for the shrimp and the water with a $20 bill, walked out to the parking lot, got into a rented Toyota Corolla, and drove away. The entire interaction lasted 11 minutes. I drove home. I placed the CDR in the manila folder labeled September 2018 in a clear plastic sleeve inside the Sentry Box. I closed the lid. I sat at the workbench for 45 minutes. I had the directive. The case was now whole. In November of 2024, my father had a stroke at his kitchen table in the Aurora bungalow at 6:40 in the morning while reading a Vietnamese language newspaper from a stack his sister in Westminster, California, mailed to him every 2 weeks. He was 76 years old. He died at Rush Copley Medical Center in Aurora at 11:17 on the morning of the 2nd of November, with my mother and me at his bedside. He had not regained consciousness. He did not know that the case was real. He did not know it was under seal in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. He did not know that 23 months earlier, his daughter had walked a 38-page memorandum into a partner office on the 26th floor of the Penobscot Building in downtown Detroit and had laid it on the desk of a 67-year-old former Customs and Border Protection Chief Counsel who had read it for 47 minutes in silence. He went to his grave believing that his daughter worked in the basement of a Schaumburg corporate office, producing PowerPoint slide decks for college interns. "I am building this for him," I had written in my own handwriting in the spiral notebook in May of 2019, on the night of the role transfer. I built it for him for 5 years and 6 months. He died before I could tell him what it was for. I had retained outside counsel in March of 2022 on the recommendation of Heinrich Brauer. The outside counsel was Donovan Reeve Ostrowski of Ostrowski and Mansing LLP, a small specialty firm on the 26th floor of the Penobscot Building in downtown Detroit. Donovan Ostrowski was 67 years old. He had spent 23 years at the Customs and Border Protection Office of Chief Counsel from 1985 through 2009 before going into private practice. He was the lead author of 7 prior customs fraud qui tam cases filed in the Eastern District of Michigan since 2012, 4 of which had settled in favor of the relator and the United States. He had been waiting for me on the morning of Saturday the 14th of May, 2022, when I drove 4 hours from Schaumburg to downtown Detroit with the Sentry Box on the passenger seat of the Honda Accord, secured with the seatbelt for the entire trip. I parked in the structure on Fort Street. I carried the Sentry Box in both hands into the Penobscot lobby. I rode the elevator to the 26th floor. Donovan came out personally to greet me. He shook my hand. He said, "Mrs. Tran-Osterlund, please come in." We sat in his partner office. I placed the Sentry Box on the floor beside my chair. I lifted out the 38-page memorandum titled Substantial Transformation Failure Analysis, CB-Ceratizit Hsinchu, October 2018 to August 2024. I placed it on his desk. I said, "Mr. Ostrowski, I have written this analysis based on 1,800 entry summaries, 1,600 origin certificates, 400 upstream supplier purchase orders, and 1 internal directive from the Vice President Global Procurement at the Austrian Parent Corporation, dated the 24th of September 2018, instructing the Schaumburg subsidiary to compensate the Section 301 tariff exposure through the Taiwan entity. The analysis covers 70 months of import volume on tungsten carbide cutting tool blanks. The aggregate evaded duty exposure is approximately $52 million before interest and penalty. I would like you to read it." Donovan picked up the memorandum. He read it at his desk, in silence, for 47 minutes. He made notes in the margins of a yellow legal pad. When he finished, he set the memorandum on the desk between us and looked up. He said, "Mrs. Tran-Osterlund, this is the cleanest Customs False Claims Act brief I have read in 17 years. He asked 3 questions. They were precise. They concerned the chain of custody on the September 2018 Directive, the methodology for the dwell time calculation at the Hsinchu warehouse, and the corporate awareness threshold for false statement liability under Section 3729 of Title 31. I answered each question in turn. The third answer required me to reference the 7-word phrase Roger Halpern had used in his office on the 7th of November 2018, which I had recorded in my spiral notebook. Donovan wrote down the 7 words. He underlined them twice. He said, "We will file the complaint under seal in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan in September. The seal will hold for 2 to 3 years. During that period, you will not be able to discuss this matter with anyone, including your husband, your daughter, your mother, or any colleague at Ceratizit USA. Are you prepared for that?" I said yes. He said, "Are you prepared for the possibility that during the seal period, you may continue working in the same building under the same supervisor with no acknowledgement of what is happening?" I said, "I have been working in that building under that supervisor with no acknowledgement for 3.5 years. The seal will not change the conditions. It will only formalize them." He said, "All right." He said, "The firm will represent you on a contingent fee basis at 28% of any gross relator share." I said yes. We signed the engagement letter. I drove home. The complaint was filed under seal on the 28th of September 2022 in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan, captioned, United States of America, ex relatione Valerie Tran-Osterlund versus Ceratizit USA LLC, case number 22 Civil 12247. Within 9 business days, the matter was assigned, on the United States Attorney's side, to Assistant United States Attorney Marsha Lorraine Quintero Wilkes, age 49, of the Trade Fraud Unit of the Eastern District of Michigan, an 11-year veteran of that office. She drove a 2017 silver Subaru Forester. I met her in person for the first time on a Tuesday afternoon in November of 2022 in a conference room on the 7th floor of the McNamara Federal Building. She wore a charcoal pantsuit and a red blouse. She had read the complaint and the memorandum. She asked me approximately 50 questions over 3.5 hours. At the end, she said, "Mrs. Tran-Osterlund, this is going to be a long matter. We will be in touch through Mr. Ostrowski. The seal will hold. Please do not discuss this with anyone." I drove home. I did not discuss it with anyone. A second relator surfaced in the spring of 2023. His name was Mark Stover Brown, an independent industry analyst based in Indianapolis, who had filed a parallel qui tam complaint based on a logical inference from publicly available Customs and Border Protection import data. His complaint had been consolidated with mine under the first-to-file rule of the False Claims Act, with my filing recognized as the first-filed insider-relator action and his as the secondary outside-relator action. Mark Stover Brown had built his case from public peers' data alone, without access to the September 2018 directive, without the 7 words from Roger Halpern's office, and without the upstream Xiamen purchase order chain documentation. His was a public records inference. Mine was a documented inside chain. I had no objection to the consolidation. 39 months passed between the filing of the complaint on the 28th of September 2022 and the unsealing of the settlement on the 4th of December 2025. I want to say something honest about those months, because the seal years are the load-bearing structure of any qui tam matter, and the seal years are the part that most people in the industry never describe in print. The seal years consisted of nothing visible. Each calendar quarter, on the first business day of the quarter, Donovan Ostrowski sent me a short email. The email always read, in substance, "Matter remains under seal, no disclosure, will update when posture changes." I produced approximately 11 slide decks during the seal period. I ate my tuna sandwich 4 days a week in the cafeteria. I drank 1 cup of coffee at 7:30 in the morning at the cafeteria coffee bar. I attended 2 summer picnics. I attended 4 December holiday parties. I exchanged Christmas cards with Cheryl Wisniewski. I wished her a happy retirement when she left in May of 2024. Her replacement, a younger man named Brendan Calderon, kept the same wall-mounted weather radar monitor running through the same 8-hour day on the same slow green sweep, counterclockwise across Cook and DuPage counties. In May of 2024, my daughter Lynn Marie Tran-Osterlund graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering. The hooding ceremony was held on a Friday afternoon at Killian Court in Cambridge. Daniel and I flew out on Thursday evening. We sat in folding chairs in the 3rd row from the aisle. She was 23 years old. She had been admitted to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration Vehicle Research and Test Center Civil Service Program in March, with a starting position as a junior crash test research engineer in East Liberty, Ohio. She was happier than I had ever seen her. After the ceremony, we ate dinner at a restaurant on Massachusetts Avenue called Little Donkey. Daniel toasted Lynn. Lynn thanked us both. I sat across the table from my daughter, who had become a federal civil servant whose work would one day involve the metallurgical analysis of paint transfer in collision reconstruction. And I did not tell her that her mother was, at that exact moment, the first named relator in a sealed customs fraud qui tam matter in the Eastern District of Michigan, whose target settlement value was estimated by Donovan Ostrowski's office at between $40 and $60 million. The seal is the seal. I went back to the hotel. I slept badly. We buried my father on the 7th of November. The funeral was held in the chapel of Sunset Cemetery on a cold, gray Thursday afternoon. My mother sat to my left in the front pew. Daniel sat to my right. Lynn sat beyond Daniel, having flown in from Columbus the previous evening. I held my mother's hand. I did not cry during the service. I cried in the parking lot afterward for approximately 3 minutes, leaning against the silver Honda Accord. Then, I drove my mother back to the bungalow. We made coffee. We ate the casseroles the church had brought. I did not tell my mother that the case was under seal. I did not tell anyone. The seal is the seal. The seal had 3 more weeks to run. I did not yet know that. On the morning of the 4th of December, 2025, at 6:12 in the morning, I received a single-sentence email on my personal Gmail account from Donovan Ostrowski. The email read, "Settlement filed yesterday, Eastern District, Michigan. Public release expected at noon Eastern. Please call me at the office at 1:15 Central." I read the email at the kitchen table while drinking my first cup of coffee. Daniel was still asleep upstairs. I drove to work at the normal time. I produced the day's slide deck. At 12:04 Central Time, I was eating lunch in the cafeteria when I refreshed the United States Department of Justice Office of Public Affairs press release feed on my phone, and I read the headline. Ceratizit USA LLC agrees to pay $54.4 million to settle False Claims Act allegations relating to evaded customs duties. I read the 3-paragraph release. I scrolled to the end. I closed the browser. I rinsed the plastic container at the cafeteria sink. I returned to the basement cubicle. I filed the day's draft in the shared drive at 4:58. I called Donovan Ostrowski from the parking garage at 5:02 in the afternoon. He confirmed the gross settlement at $54.4 million. He confirmed the relator share allocation at $9.75 million in the aggregate, of which my primary insider-relator share was $6.5 million, and Mark Stover Brown's secondary outside relator share was $3.25 million. He confirmed that after the firm's contingent fee of 28% and federal income tax withholding at the 37% bracket, my net realized share would be approximately $3.8 million. He said, "The criminal indictment of Roger Halpern on Title 18, United States Code Section 1001, false statement charges, is expected to unseal on or about the 11th of December. He said, "Dr. Eichinger Stoss is being indicted in parallel under Title 18, Section 371 for conspiracy to defraud the United States." He said, "The Republic of Austria will not extradite him under the 1856 United States-Austria Extradition Treaty commercial offense carve-out." He said, "An Interpol red notice will issue, but he will not see a United States courtroom." He said, "Mrs. Tran-Osterlund, congratulations. The work was excellent." I said, "Thank you, Donovan." I drove home. I did not tell Daniel that night. I did not tell my mother. I made dinner. We watched the Channel 5 evening news. There was no mention of the matter on local news. I went to bed at 10:30. I slept well for the first time in 7 months. The criminal indictment of Roger Halpern was unsealed on the 11th of December, 2025, on a Thursday afternoon at 1 in the afternoon Eastern Time. He was charged with 1 count of false statement to a federal agency under Title 18, United States Code Section 1001 for the country of origin certification on a Customs and Border Protection Form 7501, filed in May of 2019. He resigned from Ceratizit USA at 3:12 in the afternoon on the 11th by an email to the chief executive officer that was forwarded to the entire Schaumburg facility staff at 3:44. The all-staff email said only that Roger Halpern had decided to retire effective immediately for personal reasons after 22 years of service. There was no mention of the indictment. The Daily Herald of suburban Chicago carried a 4-paragraph article on page B7 on Friday the 12th, which referred to the indictment but did not name the qui tam relators. I read the article on my phone in the cafeteria during lunch. I finished my tuna sandwich. I went back to my cubicle. Roger Halpern entered a guilty plea on the 12th of February, 2026. He was sentenced on the 7th of May, 2026, to 18 months at the Federal Correctional Institution at Milan, Michigan, 3 years of supervised release, and a $40,000 fine. His wife, Connie Halpern, stood beside him on the courthouse steps after sentencing, in a navy coat, holding a small, folded umbrella. They had paid off the mortgage in 2022. They had been planning to retire to a cabin near Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, in 2028. The retirement plan slipped by 5 years. Dr. Reinhard Maria Eichinger-Stoss continues to work, as of the date of this telling, at his desk in the Ruda facility of Ceratizit Aktiengesellschaft. The Interpol Red Notice was issued on the 23rd of December, 2025. The Republic of Austria, through its Ministry of Justice, issued a one-paragraph statement citing Article 2 of the 1856 United States-Austria Extradition Treaty, which excludes commercial offenses from the extradition framework, and confirming that no Austrian national would be surrendered to the United States in connection with the matter. Dr. Eichinger-Stoss has not been seen at any international trade conference outside the European Union since. He does not travel to the United Kingdom, Canada, Mexico, Australia, or any other country with a United States extradition treaty applicable to non-violent commercial fraud. According to a quarterly investor newsletter published by Plancy Group in March of 2026, he intends to retire from Ceratizit Aktiengesellschaft in 2028 at the age of 65 with full pension. The newsletter does not mention the Red Notice. The newsletter does not mention the settlement. The most powerful person in the chain that produced the $54.4 million duty evasion will not see a United States courtroom in his lifetime. That is the consequence asymmetry. I do not know what to do with it. I have stopped trying to do anything with it. I submitted my resignation from Ceratizit USA on the morning of the 9th of January, 2026, by hand-delivered letter to the Interim Director of Import Operations. The letter was 3 sentences. It stated my intention to retire effective the 23rd of January with 2 weeks' notice. It thanked the company for 19 years of professional opportunity. It declined any retirement reception or formal recognition. I worked the 2 weeks. On the morning of the 23rd, a Friday, I conducted my exit interview with a junior human resources generalist named Caitlin O'Halloran, age 26, who had no idea who I was, what I had done, or what the matter on her standard exit interview form actually concerned. She asked me the standard questions. Did I feel my contributions had been recognized? Did I feel my supervisor had supported my development? Would I recommend Ceratizit USA as an employer? I answered each question honestly and without elaboration. I returned my badge at the security desk in the lobby. I drove home. I sat at the kitchen table. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel relieved. I felt the way a person feels who has completed a long act of indexing on a document that no one will ever read. I made a sandwich. I went for a walk in Spring Valley Nature Sanctuary. I came home. I made dinner. I went to bed. In March of 2026, the Customs and Border Protection Office of Trade published an internal training curriculum for trade fraud investigators titled the Tran-Osterlund Origin Verification Curriculum. The curriculum is 187 pages. It is taught at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, in a 1-week intensive course 4 times a year. The methodology is drawn directly from the 38-page memorandum I had laid on Donovan Ostrowski's desk on the 14th of May, 2022. Donovan had received the request from Customs and Border Protection in February. He had asked me, by email, whether I would consent to the title attribution. I had consented in writing on one condition, which was that the title appear in academic citation form only, with no further biographical material about me. The condition was honored. The curriculum is taught by Customs and Border Protection senior special agents. I have not been invited to deliver any portion of it. I have not requested to. I have not visited Glencoe. I have not received any payment, honorarium, or recognition associated with the curriculum. The methodology is now the property of the United States government, which is the appropriate owner. The methodology is teaching investigators in Glencoe at this moment. That is the appropriate use. I do not need to be present. There is one more thing about the curriculum, and it concerns my daughter. In February of 2027, Lynn was given the curriculum as supplemental reading for an elective graduate seminar on supply chain analytics that she was auditing through Northwestern University's McCormick School of Engineering on a remote basis. The professor distributed it as recommended reading to the cohort. Lynn sent me a brief email. The subject line read, "Customs Fraud Article." The body was 3 sentences. She wrote, "This is a really well-written course module. You would actually like it. It is about how customs fraud actually works through international supply chains." She did not recognize, in the title attribution, the surname she shares with me. The hyphenated form of the name was, to her, a coincidence of academic citation. I read the email twice. I did not reply for 3 days. When I did reply, I wrote, "Thank you for sending it. I will look at it this weekend." I did not look at it. I have not looked at it. I do not intend to look at it. I do not know whether I will tell Lynn in some future conversation that the curriculum is mine. I do not know whether she will figure it out on her own at some point in her career. The curriculum is teaching investigators. That is what I built it for. The recognition is a separate matter from the work, and I have made my peace with the separation a long time ago. On the afternoon of Tuesday, the 18th of May, 2026, at 4:12 in the afternoon, I drove from the Brittany Avenue split level in Schaumburg to Sunset Cemetery in Aurora, alone in the silver Honda Accord. I parked at the cemetery gate at 5:01 in the afternoon. The Lutheran section is in the northeast quadrant, on a small rise overlooking a pond. My father is buried in Section C, Plot 247. The headstone is gray Vermont granite with a polished face and rough-hewn shoulders. The inscription is in 3 lines. Quan Tran, 1948 to 2024. Beloved husband, father, grandfather. Beneath the 3rd line, in smaller engraving, are the 3 words my mother had selected. Trust the work. I walked from the gate to the plot in approximately 7 minutes, taking the gravel path past the pond and the small stand of red maples. I stood at the headstone for 9 minutes. I did not bring flowers. I did not bring a folder. I did not bring the curriculum. I did not bring the settlement letter. I had brought one thing, in the right-hand pocket of my spring coat. I removed it. It was the black anodized aluminum challenge coin, engraved Caterpillar Aurora, 31 years, 1981 to 2015, which my father had given me on the night of the 3rd of October, 2015, with the words, "This is for keeping me honest." I held the coin in my open palm for a moment. I placed it on the smooth granite shoulder of the headstone, above the first letter of his given name, on the polished face that catches the afternoon light. I did not say anything aloud. The wind moved the leaves of the maples. A grackle landed on the fence post 40 feet away and looked at me. A groundskeeper's electric utility cart passed on the access road beyond the pond. I stood for 9 minutes. I watched the coin on the granite shoulder. I turned. I walked back to the car. I drove home down Galena Boulevard, past the corner where the Caterpillar plant gates had stood for 43 years until the plant closed in 2017, and the parcel was redeveloped as a retail strip with a Chipotle and a T-Mobile store and a Sherwin-Williams paint outlet. I came home at 5:57. Daniel was in the kitchen, browning ground beef for the chili he made on Tuesday evenings. He looked up. He said, "Hey, how was the drive?" I said, "It was fine." I washed my hands at the kitchen sink. I made the cornbread. We ate at 6:45. We watched the Channel 5 news. We went to bed at 10:30. I did not tell Daniel where I had been. He did not ask. He has not asked since. I do not believe he needs to ask. I believe he understands the geometry of this household, which is that I do certain things alone, and that the doing of them alone is part of how I do them, and that he respects the geometry. The next morning at 7 o'clock, we walked the Spring Valley Nature Sanctuary loop together. We did not speak much. The trees were leafing out. The morning was cool. The coin is still on the granite shoulder of the headstone, as far as I know. I have not been back to the cemetery. I do not know whether the rain has washed it to the ground in some afternoon storm, or whether the groundskeeper has retrieved it and put it in a lost and found drawer in the maintenance shed, where it will sit for a few years and then be thrown out, or whether some other visitor has lifted it and pocketed it as a curio. I do not need to know which of those things happened. The coin was given to my father at his retirement dinner in 2015 by the Caterpillar Aurora plant. He gave it to me on the same night. I returned it to him on the 18th of May, 2026, at the headstone above his name. The work it commemorated was 31 years of metalworking on a Midwestern manufacturing floor by a man who had crossed the Pacific Ocean in a fishing boat at the age of 31 and who had believed, with the uncomplicated faith of a refugee, that the system worked if you followed the rules. The work it commemorates now is also that. It is also, in a smaller way, 4 years of indexing in a basement utility room in Schaumburg, Illinois, by a 53-year-old senior import compliance specialist who had inherited the same uncomplicated faith from her father and had decided, when the system was being made to lie, that the lie was not going to be held together by her signature. The chain of work runs from his factory floor, through my basement, to the desk of an assistant United States attorney in Detroit, through a settlement of $54.4 million to the United States Treasury, through a 187-page training curriculum to a classroom in Glencoe, Georgia, where Customs and Border Protection investigators are right now learning how to read a country of origin certificate the way my father taught me to read an engine torque specification. Which is to say, with the assumption that the number on the page either matches the metal in your hand or it does not. My name is Valerie Tran-Osterlund. I am 53 years old. I have retired from the import compliance industry. I do not intend to return. I volunteer 2 days a week at the Aurora Public Library on Benton Street, helping with adult literacy classes and translating immigration paperwork for newer Vietnamese American arrivals. My father volunteered in the same program in 1981 as a student. I am there now as a teacher. I walk the Spring Valley Loop with Daniel at 7 in the morning every weekday. I garden. I have planted 4 camellias along the west fence of the backyard. They have not yet bloomed. They will bloom next spring or the year after. The system works if you follow the rules. Sometimes the rules ask you to follow them quietly. Sometimes they ask you to follow them in a basement cubicle for 6 years. Sometimes they ask you to keep a CDR in a clear plastic sleeve in a fireproof box for 40 months under federal seal. Sometimes they ask you to put a coin on a headstone and walk to your car. The rules do not ask you for your name in the newspaper. They ask you to do the work. I did the work. My name is Valerie Tran-Osterlund. I worked in import compliance for 19 years. I retired at 53. The books are closed. The coin is on the stone. That is enough.